Hello and welcome to FPLIQ. Teacher FPL and Ryan MS underscore MS28 football chat box. That never fails to tickle me, Ryan. I'm not gonna lie. Still waiting in the wings on what to change. But before we go into hello, I want to go through what we're going to do today, and it's going to be very TN heavy for those lovers of the planet. Ryan, hello, Ryan.
Did
I think
Rob's
you're on
audio
mute.
just go?
You're
Okay,
on mute.
God.
I'm listening to you on YouTube. Yes.
Yeah, I wonder
thought my
why.
internet died.
I wonder
God.
why you looked so confused. I am mute on Discord, I think, and I don't know why. So we'll just. I'll deal with that
Oh dear.
after the
I was
introductions.
switching to YouTube as well.
Oh dear. All right. Well, I'll deal with that after the introductions because we're going to be talking a lot with TN today because we're going to be looking at templates, teams for certain specific ranks. Now, funnily enough, we talked before the show that we are all kind of at different ranks ourselves. So we're going to be able to have a look at what teams are looking like at certain milestones, sort of the top 10,000, top 1 million, top 3 million, and content creators as well, and going through what we can learn from that and the strengths and weaknesses. We're looking at Everton against Brighton in the matchups this week. I want to talk about the Everton assets, how they're undervalued, especially the defense, best Brighton players to have in our sides now and why, and then general predictions and how those teams will match up against each other. Then we go on to Newcastle against Arsenal. Potentially, is it time to bench or sell Newcastle defenders specifically? Are the Arsenal attack actually worth investing in? And again, general play styles and player and team matchups before we go into our 4-game week player pick review and picking the players up for the next 4 game weeks. And finally, settling on captaincy for this week. So we'll start with Tien, how are you doing today, Tien? Whilst I quickly sort out the audio. And I'll keep talking until it's you. So then there's no awkward silence.
There's gonna be a bit of a delay because we can't hear you on this
Oh.
by YouTube. And looks like our videos are gone on YouTube as well. Sorry, the audio. I think you can go. But yeah, no, I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm excited for today, and yeah, just another week with technical difficulty. What's news?
Okay, what we'll do is we'll go round. So we'll just go Teacher and Ryan to introduce, and then we'll
Maybe
start.
Ryan, your turn.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Hello.
I'm sick. I will do my absolute best to provide as much insight as I can with the least amount of words possible. That will be it. All I can say is that yeah, you guys will be screaming at me. Are you
Early sneak peek from Lucian there in terms of what is to come. But yeah, I think we can hear Rob now by the looks of it.
Yes.
Welcome back, Rob.
Great start. Incredible stuff.
Okay, we can hear you on YouTube as well. So.
All right, good. Yeah, YouTube was fine. Keep going.
Go Ryan, go.
But yeah, welcome. I think you mentioned something about my ad. I went and did check that. Like, I went and checked again. Unfortunately, Twitter maxes your handle at 15 characters, and football chat box itself is 15 characters, and it's taken. So I can't even add an underscore anywhere. Maybe I should go FPL chat box because I've heard a lot of people refer to me as FPL chat box when it's football chat box, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But then I'll have to rebrand, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You can spell football as FUTBOL.
That's true.
Or F-ball. Yeah, go for F-ball.
We'll have to see.
Just So what we'll do, we'll go straight into it. We're going to talk about templates. Tien's going to be the man for this one. So he has sent some pictures. He's a really cool thread about looking at the template teams for each sort of milestone rank. I mentioned earlier about the numbers. So on the screen now is the top 3 million one. I'll keep adjusting it so people can kind of be able to see it. But whichever rank area he's talking about, that's what I'll show. So, Tien, you've been looking into, because you are like the meta man of the team, you've been looking into what whole sort of squads or team structures or popular players are for each specific rank to see if you can learn anything about like your own play style or what are the strengths and weaknesses of the templates in those areas. So you can take it away and we'll just chip in with what we think.
Yeah, so so I looked at the template teams at different rank tiers. So top 3 million, top 1 million, top 100,000, top 10,000, top 1,000, and so on and so forth. So I looked at all of those template teams after game week 8, and then I looked at them again after game week 10, when a lot of people have already played their wildcards. Right, and I think what is showing there, Rob, is the top 3 million.
Yeah, that's
right. So at the top 3 million, you can see that the template teams, the template team is Areola and Turner in goals. And spoiler alert, they're gonna be all the same all the way through. But in defense, you've got Trippier, Cash, Udogi, Saliba, and Burn. In midfield, you've got Salah, Saka, Son, Madison, Mitoma, and up front, you've got Haaland, Watkins, and Alvarez. Now, if you see at the top there with the chips used, so 54.4% of the top 3 million managers have used the first wildcard, and then you can see the bench boost, free hit, and triple captain chips as well. So if you can just quickly flick through the next one, Rob. I'm not going to read them out again because, top 1 million, going to be pretty much identical team. So the only difference is going to be a few percentages. So now, for example, Cash is the highest owned defender instead of Trippier, but more or less the same team. And Saliba and Burn just switch around as well. And once again, you can see the wildcard has been used a little bit more, so 62.2%. Next one, please, Rob.
Yep.
So in the top, so which one you got? Top
10K.
10,000. Yeah, so top 10K. So now you can see that the wildcard chip has been used by 70.3%. And there are two differences in the template. So Tsimikas comes in, and Diaby comes in. So Diaby instead of Mitoma and Tsimikas instead of Saliba. And that's going to be the same for the next one as well. So 70.3% of wildcard being used, and then next one is top 1,000.
Yep.
If you can show that, which once again is the same as the top 10K, with Tsimikas and Diaby in there as well, and 73% of managers in the top 1K have used their wildcard. So if you look at all of these teams, 13 of the 15 players are the same. The only difference are the two players. You've got Tsimikas and Diaby in the higher ranked tiers compared to Saliba and Mitoma in the lower ranked tiers. Now, the other theme that you can see is the higher the ranked tiers, the higher the percentage of managers have used their wildcard. Now, the other thing that if you look at the chips used, top 1K have used the most amount of chips. So bench boost, free hit, and triple captains as well. So, probably that is why they are there, because they've used more chips. And generally, the higher the rank, the higher the chips uses as well. But the top 1K is significantly higher than the rest. So I guess what we can learn from this, right, is that the template is actually pretty strong. Right? It has a very strong core of 13 players that are the same all throughout different rank tiers, all the way from 1,000 to 3 million. And obviously, these template teams do not resemble an actual team because they are out of anyone's budget. Right? Basically, they are just a collection of the highest owned players in that rank tiers, and so that kind of explain why it has been quite difficult to gain ranks, because they're just too many highly or moderately owned players that you don't have, who can just hurt you, or hurt your rank when they do well, no matter what your rank tier is. And then there's a sort of a volatile rank changes just because you've got one or two players with outside of the template that does well. But generally, your rank will just go up and down, depending on who you have and who you don't have. So yeah, so that's just some of my observations, in terms of the template team in different rank tiers. Do you guys have anything to add?
Yeah, just the idea that how strong the template is, it resonates through millions of rank. This isn't just like people got ahead early and the template's there and it's changed. Like, it's been like this for at least 5 game weeks now, give or take a couple of players, and it just feels like you're saying about, it feels like it's all or nothing. And now you can rely on your chips because, like you said, the higher the ranks, the more chips have been deployed. And the top 1,000, of course, it just feels like they've just thrown the chips out there to get ahead early, and they'll try and stay ahead. But even if you go to like the 10K or the million, still there's not a huge difference in the amount of chips that has been used. So it's not even like, oh yeah, I'm only behind because they've all used chips. The template is so strong. You said 13 out of 15. And that is obviously including the bench. So some of the and you can't have all the players in this, but most of us will have most of these players, and it just feels like it's all or nothing. Like, if you want to go up, you've got to go against the template, but the template is so strong and these players are doing so well. How you're gonna have to beat it with some crazy punts with those just 2 spaces in your squad, and that's and you're going to be chipping away all season, and then it just takes 1 game week for people to get a good chip boost, and all that hard work of chipping away 10 points every game week comes down to nothing because people have got a bench boost or a free hit or a triple captain they've used that has paid off big time. So it's a little bit depressing reading to see just how similar it is. Like, I've got no questions about like the goalkeepers, right? Because it's value. I get it. It's like the cheapest combo you can get. Just and the attack, like I said before about last week about, we don't really have number 9s anymore. Like, you'd throw Darwin if he's got minutes and Wilson if he's got minutes into those 3, and you got 2 out of the 3 of them are from Man City. This team here. And I don't know, it just depresses me a little bit just how template it is. And I can't sit here and say I'm any different because I have Areola, Turner, Cash, Trippier, Tsimikas, Udogie, Diaby, Saka, Maddison, Maddison, Son, Salah, Haaland. They're in my 11. Well, Udogie's on the bench, but I've got those players. I will claim I did have Diaby since game week 2. That's my only thing, and I had Mitoma a couple of weeks ago. But yeah, that's just my thought. It depresses me, and you've got to go massively against the template, and you're going to get big greens or big reds, and that's it. But this template is so strong. Like, how can you go against these players? Even just a couple of them, and you'll just get massively punished. Oh yeah, Ryan, what do you think about?
So on the team on screen,
This is
now obviously Tien did mention, Tien did mention that it's not going to be the same everywhere, but like I've got, except for the players on the corner, like your Dan Burn, DRB, Alvarez, and maybe Udogi, I've got everyone else. So the only difference are like my Gabriel, and instead of DRB, I've got Mitoma, which you see in the like when we displayed the top 1 million, top 3 million.
Yeah,
so
that's
Mitoma quite a lot.
Yeah.
I think one thing I mentioned before as well when we were discussing this, my theory is it's mostly depending on when you wildcarded, the teams are slightly like kind of correlate to the ranks, because not many people would have gone for DRB in a game week 10 wildcard because he didn't return really in the last 2 game weeks before that. And then a lot of people would have gone for Arsenal defense, which you see in the higher like 1 million, 3 million ranks, but you don't see it in the lower ranks because people were still uncertain if they wanted to drop their Spurs players. So you see Udogi, Son, Madison quite a lot there. And obviously there is a difference in team value as well. You see the higher ranks have a slightly higher team value. The lower ranks have a slightly lower one. The one thing is, if you notice this game week, the difference between the red arrow and a green arrow was basically whether you had those 1 or 2 differences. DRB did well. If you didn't have DRB, you're most likely looking at a red arrow. I had Mitoma, who didn't do anything, and I had no DRB. That was basically like the difference between a green and a red. So, and this will probably be the case going forward as well. The template is not really going to change. We spoke about last week as well in terms of, is FPL getting too hard? And we decided like, okay, people are getting more knowledgeable about the game as well. So if you really want to try and climb rank, you're going to have to find these 1 or 2 different players that bang for you. And you can't go full tilt risk as well and like go completely against the template, because you might get destroyed in 1 week. You might do well in a couple of weeks and you might get destroyed and bought down back to earth. Like for those who sold Haaland, you knew the risk and bought back down to earth in like 1 game week. And now people are deciding whether they need to take a hit to bring in Haaland again. But the thing is, you just need to find the small edges, and then you just got to hope for luck to play its part. Or like we conned last week, football. It's not variance, it's football.
Yeah.
It just has to play its part.
Yeah, I think I know Tien's been a strong believer of that, and I think we all are. Just the idea, like, there's 11 players on the pitch, and we can see there's a clear template, but you don't need 11 differentials, right? You only need, like, and you just said it yourself, Ryan, like, it was a 1 player difference. So, yeah, you can have Haaland and Salah and Cash and Trippier and Madison and or Son and Saka and the like, right? You just need 1 or 2 players to just maybe take a risk on. So, like, with the run of fixtures, I know he's great value, but let's just say Alvarez. Alvarez is so highly owned, and I know he's cheap and everything, but, you know, instead of having an Alvarez, have a punt on that 1 player in your team. Or instead of having... some of them are just too good, but I don't have Saka, and he's got really high ownership in the game. He's over 50% in the game, and he's high ownership in the high ranks, right? So he's the 1 player that I'll go against and put someone else in there. So I've still got the Son Madison double up, which together combined, because people always say, oh, this guy's 40%, this guy's 35%, but how many people own both of them is a lot lower than what you think, right? So yeah, I think some good points. Lucian, your thoughts on the templates?
Well, yeah, as you guys have said, I think templates aside, we have to understand that the 6th player that doesn't make the 15, right? The 6th midfielder and the 4th forward and the 6th defender, I suspect would not have been that far back in terms of percentage owned. That really is the crux of the challenge this season, because as you guys have said, right? If you own double Spurs, you're gonna miss out on Saka, and if you own Saka, you're gonna miss out on one of Madison and Son. I think for me, it's about timing the players, owning the players with high floor versus, going against them and owning the players with high ceilings at the right time. That's pretty much it. I mean, it kind of goes against conventional SPL wisdom because it's like if you sell an asset for another asset, that's like a huge red flag, right? It's a no in TN's book. But so many of us are trying to transition from like Luis Diaz to Bukayo Saka. And we're all like finger on the pulse, like we're just there, push the button, push the button. Nope. Oh, Luis Diaz's parents got kidnapped. So, uh, I I feel that, as Ryan said, the margins are so fine that the size of your arrow and the color of your arrow, for that matter, depends on whether you have like those 1 to 2 players who did shape the entire game week. So if that's the case, it just means that we're all still really crammed together, and I'm not that worried about the template. If the template is strong, get the template. So there's no reason to catch up on the template teams every week. Um, yeah, it's just I think it's just a shame that Man United players ownership aren't that high anymore. So the players that are forming the template are legitimately good players, and that makes me scratch my head because that means the game is truly well and difficult.
Yeah. I mean, there's less than 70 points sounds like a lot. But we still have, it's game week 10 in a 38 game week season. And I'm 177,000 rank. And there's 70 points between me and a 3 million. Right? It just takes but this is again when we come to the template. I'm not worried about my rank anyway. I'm playing the game. It's early doors still, but I'm not that scared about the people. So I was depressed earlier, but I feel a little bit safer now because we've seen that the top 3 million and top 1 million squads are similar to what I've got anyway. So I don't feel like it, even though I might be 70 points ahead of 3 million. I'm going to have to get real unlucky for the 1 or 2 players that they have to suddenly make up that gap in a very, very short space of time. So there's just one more template that you didn't discuss yet, and it is the content creator one. So just before you go into this, can you explain who would be involved in this template?
Yep.
So it is content creator, but like who is this?
Yeah, so the content creators league is something that the FPL Gameweek website pulled together. So there's 65 of basically all the popular content creators that you can think of. So name of a popular content creator, then they will be in there. But basically the idea, and I think if you look at the template here, it is actually quite different to the all the template team that we just seen. One, it's more resemblant of an actual FPL team that someone has, because it's more reflective of the budget that a typical team will have right now. So rather than have all the collection of being a collection of all the highly or highest owned players, it includes like bench fodders like Taylor and Archer, right? And then because it can't have enough money to have all the big hitters, so it doesn't have Trippier, for example. It has Gabriel instead. And so no Alvarez, no Doggy, and it has Bowen instead of Diaby and Mitoma, right? So it reflects an actual FPL team, and more importantly, 25% of the content creators in this group, so 65 of them, 25% play their wildcard in game week 10. So that is much higher than all the other template teams in all different rank tiers, because they were varying between 3 and 5, about 3 and 5% of people who play their wildcard in game week 10. A lot of them play in game week 8 and 9. And overall as well, 87.5% of the content creators have already played their wildcard. for the season, so significantly higher than all the other template teams as well. So what we can learn from this team is that it's probably reflecting what we see on Twitter a lot more in terms of like how the engaged managers are doing. So obviously, you know, the content creators are the mainstream managers that, you know, they have a lot of influence that we already talked about, you know, last week or the week before, right? They will have a lot of influence on how the more engaged managers that are more active on Twitter will play. So if anything, we can look at this template and then maybe we could pick the weakness in this template, and then maybe we can start sort of thinking about how we can attack the template and try to get ahead. But at the end of the day, because of what we just said about the template team being so strong in all different rank tiers, all the way from top 1,000 to top 3 millions, which I don't think we've seen before. Because I think in prior seasons we've got, you know, a stronger template in the sort of more engaged managers at the higher rank tiers, and then, you know, down the 3-4 millions, you will have a very different team because a lot of team have stopped playing and people are not engaged anymore after a few game weeks, or they play all the chips and then they're just slowly dripping down, right? But basically across all rank tiers, you've got very strong templates of basically the same group of players. And I think Lucian made a very good point as well, that the ones that didn't make the template, that sit just below that, the template, they were pretty high percentage as well. So like Mbomo, for example, it would be like in the high 20s and 30%. That just sitting under Mitoma and Diaby. So in a way, like if and obviously he's been returning very well in the last couple of weeks, right? And he's been hurting our ranks as well because he's pretty highly owned. And the other problem with attacking the template is that if you attack by replacing one player with another, like, you know, if you replace Diaby with Mitoma, you're not really gaining too much because you're gaining against those that have Diaby, but then you run into the template that have Mitoma,
Yep.
and vice versa. So then it's just a matter of like, okay, well, in any given week, which players you have against which players you don't have, both are equally highly owned, depending on which, you know, you're trying to get ahead, but then you bump into the team that have that player. So you're ranked sort of like up and down, but then everywhere you go, you hit the same roadblock. And for me, you know, I went against the template in that I didn't have Son, right, and I didn't have Alvarez, and I didn't have Saka, and they are all very highly owned players. So when they didn't do well, like game week 8, Son blanked, right? I had a massive rank boost because I captained Salah and I didn't have Son. But then, you know, in the following 2 weeks, my ranks, you know, bombed down because Son returned
14
and
10. Yeah. 24
yeah,
in 2
and
weeks.
then I captained I captained the players that didn't return, you know, didn't have the highest point. So I think one way to at least try to attack this template is maybe going for like differential players. Like Darwin, for example, is one example that you can really, you know, if you have Alvarez or Watkins, but you don't want them, you can have Darwin instead, because then you're betting against those template picks. And Bomo, as I mentioned, is not really a differential because he's pretty highly owned as well.
20%.
But obviously you could, yeah, but then you could go him over Mitoma Bowen, for example, and then you can go ahead with like, you know, Palace defenders or Spur defenders, or you go with like a double Arsenal attacks from game week 12 over, you know, the Spurs boys or you know, those Bowens and Mitoma and stuff. So there's only a few. I think there's only a few places where you can go to be different, but I'm not even sure that is the right way to do it. But maybe just accept that this is going to be a very strong group of players, and they are templates for a good reason because they're all doing well. Like every week we are deciding to move one good player for another good player,
Yeah.
right? So then I think it comes down to picking the right captain, because I think op captaincy has opened up a little bit with Haaland having tough fixtures and easy fixtures, and then he can switch between Haaland and Salah and Son and Saka, and I think nailing the captaincy is probably has been the key, because people have gone without Haaland. They've done well if they nailed the captain in the last few weeks. People have gone without Salah. They would have done well if they nailed the captaincy. Would be harder, but they still could do it if they nail the captaincy. And similarly with people who've gone without Son. So I think captaincy just become more important than ever, rather than trying to go differential and try to break the template, because it's extremely difficult. You're going from rank tier to another rank tier, you kind of bump into the same kind of players.
I think you're exactly right. Like, literally, captaincy is the only reason that I am not absolutely sky high. Like, I went Salah, Haaland, hold. I went Haaland, Salah, hold. In Gameweek 9. I went Son against Luton, Salah, hold. If I would have got captaincy right in all three of those game weeks, I would have probably gained about 40 points minimum. Between 30 and 45 points, something like that. And I'm not going to check it because I'm not playing the if, whats, and buts game. But I think that really solidifies your point that, yeah, you can have one player maybe in your 11 that's differential, but captaincy is the one that's going to be key. And when we talked about being excited from game week 8 with wildcards coming off, people going no Haaland, captaincy becoming open, I think that's going to be it. It's going to be, can you get the captaincy right? And unfortunately, 3 out of 3, I haven't chosen the right one. That just happens, right? But I think that's a really great point. Just then, before we go into matchups, just something that I saw from FPL Focal, which is interesting. It comes back to, is FPL getting harder? I said I was depressed when I saw this because of how cramped the ranks are and how similar and template the teams are. Really interesting fact that I came across, and it might be due to the fact of quote smaller teams getting promoted and quote big teams getting relegated. But this is the first time in FPL history where the player base has shrunk. We have fewer players now than we did this time last year by about 400,000. So it's the first year in FPL's history where the game hasn't grown. So you can argue, I'm not trying to beat down Luton, but they have a small worldwide fan base compared to Leeds, Leicester, and Southampton, right? But I won't say it's ginormous. But yeah, the fact that there's like around 500,000 fewer FPL players this year, at this point right now, it might be time for really FPL to seriously look at it, because that's the bottom line that they're looking at, right? And if fewer people are starting to play the game, and we've got the same rules, the same points, the same templates, it's a bit foreshadowing, really. Right, so let's go into the matchups. So quite a bit to talk about these today. Teams with, so every time we choose a matchup, it's not just football relevant, it's FPL relevant, either for this specific game week. Maybe there's a player that we think is going to have a chance or more opportunities because they're matching up against this play style or this specific player. And sometimes we look at the team itself because maybe it's time to invest in them or bring them into our team or sell them because of this game or future fixtures, right? So as always, we're going to start with Lucian, and the first one is Everton against Brighton. So, Lucian, you want to kick us off with this?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to provide too much context because Everton against Brighton is something that we all care more about the points rather than tactics. So I'm gonna go with the key talking points, and I'm gonna chip in with a little bit of my own, just so we can address this properly and concisely. So first things first. Everton defense, as you know, Martin Brandtwaite has almost certainly transformed the side, but still, DCL. I think he's got a couple of goals in a couple of games now. Is he worth the third striker slot at 5.8 million? So, secondly, obviously, with Brighton's good fixtures, we've talked about it multiple times now. Evan Ferguson. Anyway, more on that later. And yes, lastly, general predictions and how Brighton will play in the face of all their injuries. So, I'm just going to chip in here and say that first and foremost, DCL, 5.8 million striker, faces competition from Eddie Nketiah, Ferguson himself, or Joao Pedro, as well as, Matheus Cunha. Yeah, if anybody is interested in picking up a Wolves player against Sheffield United for a week. And I think this basically tempts us to run a 3-4-3, especially if you want to have like a glowing midfield, right? Of like Son, Salah, Saka plus one of the 6.5s. I think that's a genuine shout. And I just think that 3-5-2, if you run multiple 6.5s, have far, far more upside, because I think the weaknesses of all of these players is that they will get like a 20-point haul in one game. And then the most they can get probably would be a goal a game, and that's like a stream of 8 points compared to your Mbomos, your Diabis, your Mitomas, who can get 14 points on any given day. So that's my input, where the 3-5-2 has far, far more bearing than any third striker out there. And honestly speaking, the best Brighton asset right now, I still feel in this particular matchup, Mitoma, because the Everton game exposed a huge, huge flaw that they just cannot solve. Whether they play Coleman, Patterson, or Ashley Young at right back, they will get skinned alive. And this is Mitoma territory. It doesn't matter if he has a Stupinian or not. Brighton dominated the ball against Fulham so badly that I think, yeah, Brighton are going to have a spell of possession where they absolutely dominate certain areas, and they get to use their clever shot combination links, but that I'm not gonna elaborate on too much. But just a quick note on their alternatives instead of Mitoma, which is the template pick, right? Adingra suffers from X minutes, as he will share the 90 minutes across the next few games with Ansu Fati. Ferguson, I still feel, is going to run. It's kind of like the unstoppable force against the immovable wall, quote unquote, with Brentwaite in really good form, playing this counter pressing game that Sean Dyche has been doing really well with. And lastly, I do feel that the true threat of Mitomas is actually Pascal Gross or Joao Pedro. Good news for Rob, right? So I think this really comes down to whether you feel that Everton playing at home would at least try to work the ball down whatever flank themselves, and Brighton hit them back on the transitions themselves. And this is where, yeah, Joao Pedro, in that traditional left half space that he's done so well this season, will, cannibalize some of Mitoma's output. So that's, yeah, what I'm predicting to happen.
Great. I think what we'll do is you still have your points about the play styles.
I've kind of integrated it into my previous
I just
points.
didn't
I'm
want to
not-
skip
yeah,
if you missed something.
it's all right.
But that's fine. Yeah, because I didn't want you to research it and skip it out. Just about the about Harrison, which I think is an interesting point. So what we'll do, and this is for all four of us, not just for everyone, but we have sort of sub questions for each matchup. So what we'll do is we'll each go around the questions subsections first. So we'll talk it rather than just like doing the whole thing, just so it keeps a bit of a structure. So I'll just talk then about the Everton assets, and then we'll go around and do that, and then the Brighton assets, and then the general play styles, just so we all like go along the same order. So in terms of Everton, for me, if they had better fixtures, I would definitely look at DCL, because you guys know, and maybe other people know, that I mainly run like a 4-5-1, 3-5-2, with my second striker being cheap. So the reason why Lucian's mentioned me in this is because my second striker is Joao Pedro, because I go for a very cheap second striker. So why wouldn't I want a nailed 90-minute-ish Talisman, who's on penalties, who we know has the ability to get a double-digit haul, and he's 5.8 million. He's got 4 games now on the bounce, which for him in recent years is pretty good. And I just feel as though if you can find a defender or a team or another striker even that you can rotate him with, let's say Brighton and Everton rotate well, and you've got Haaland, Pedro, DCL. Like you can rotate those as the second striker, or a 3-5-2, and you have a 4th defender who can rotate with DCL, because Everton have sort of a patchy run of fixtures where it's sort of some good, some bad. I really don't see the problem with that at all, because you're also getting Everton are a top 10 side for attacking XG, and I've sort of dug in about Arsenal not having like big chances or not having an high XG. Everton have a higher attacking XG than Arsenal and Man United. So if he keeps getting minutes, I don't see why he's not a rotation option. Speaking of defenders, Branthwaite is 4 million. He's nailed. He's playing in a defensive-minded side. He's like as cheap as you can get. He's getting plaudits and pundits praising his performances in recent weeks. It's an absolute no-brainer. If I've got nothing to do this week, or I need to save some money, I'm just going to do like Kabore to Branthwaite, because why wouldn't I? I know it feels like it's a sideways move, but it's not, because in some game weeks I'm going to have to maybe go to that 4 million defender. And who do I want? Why would I not want an Everton side? I'm literally paying the lowest amount of money for a team who are mid-table rather than fighting relegation and trying to not get the lowest point score in an entire Premier League season, right? Why am I going to go for Kabore? Yes, he attacks, but he's not nailed, and he plays for Luton. So the other positive for Everton's defence, if you can pick up the goalkeeper and their entire defence for 4.4 million or less. The 6th best at not allowing shots on target, mid-table for other key stats like shots in the box and big chances. So the value is there. And I've said before, as a whole, Everton are the unluckiest and the most undervalued team in the league. They arguably should have beaten Wolves, Fulham, Sheffield United, and Luton. And I know that they didn't. And it comes into that dreaded word of variance. But even in that very first game week, didn't they have something ridiculous like over 2 XG, and then Leno walked away with all
No,
those
it's not about the XG. It's about Neil Maupay.
because he misses the chances. But now DCL's back in instead of Maupay, who's not even there anymore. So it's one of them where they should have won those games. It's crazy that they haven't. There's 4 games. They should have like 9 points more, at least, that they should. And you can say, well, they didn't do it. I know, but it's like when you buy a striker who hasn't scored. He's not in your team, but you're like, oh, this guy gets like 2 big chances every week, and he gets 10 touches in it, whatever stats stick out to you, right? And you watch him, like, hey, he's looking pretty good, but they're just not getting the goals. It always feels like these sort of things work themselves out, and they do start to balance out. And Everton just feels like that's the team. They've already started to get the clean sheets. A lot of people started the season with Pickford and were very angry with him because of the fixtures I've just said that they lost. But they've kept 2 clean sheets in the last 3. So I just think goals will start to even themselves out now. So in terms of Everton as value, if you've not played your wildcard yet, or if you've got nothing to do, I don't see why you wouldn't be bringing in the likes of like Branthwaite, 4 million as your sub, that, or DCL 5.8 million, Talisman. Why not? Thoughts on Everton, Tien?
Yeah, I think for me it's the fixtures. I mean, I've got a brainwave, and it's just a bench option. Like, it'll be handy if he need to comes on, he can come on. But I think, unless on the wild card, or you have nothing else, like absolutely nothing else to do, and you got to burn a transfer, then maybe. But otherwise, the fixtures are just not very good, and Pickford as well. But no one's going to change their keeper, right? Unless on the wild card. So if you got Pickford, well, maybe he can keep him, and you haven't played your wild card yet. So yeah, I think good values there, and yeah, DCL, you're gonna compete with some really really good options around that price point as well. So unfortunately, that's for me. It's gonna be a pass.
Ryan, thoughts on Everton assets?
So I was looking at like rotation pattern when you mentioned it.
Yeah.
Did somewhat rotate with Wolves for a short period of time. Maybe Liverpool. I guess if you rotate with Wolves, you could do like that. People are thinking about Huang as a fifth midfielder. Maybe you could do that rotation with Braithwaite. But then again, the fixtures aren't that great in a stretch, to be honest. The other thing is, I guess, DCL, he's like a cheap Callum Wilson on FPL. Or at least I look at him like that. He's a good option when fit. Sadly, he's not fit most of the time. That's the one big problem with DCL. And that alone might just push me off him in terms of like going and approaching it. Because unlike Everton, unlike Newcastle, who can probably play someone else there if they need to give Callum Wilson a rest, Everton really don't have that many strikers. So they kind of have to hope on DCL. And whenever he's fit, they have to play him. They can't really give him a rest per se. So if they had better fixtures, maybe I would have been a bit more tempted. But honestly, if you want as a third striker for DCL and to occasionally play him, it's not a bad idea. But you might prefer the likes of, if you can go like that 0.2 extra to Evan Ferguson, it might be slightly better.
It's just minutes. That's what I know. DCL's not fit, but in terms of the players for that value. But you just said Everton Wolves, right? As a rotation pairing to game week 20 would be. Each team I'm saying is a game week, right? And you'd play either Kuna for 5.5 or DCL for 5.8 as your second striker, right? Sheffield, Palace, Fulham, Forest, Burnley, Tottenham, Chelsea, take your pick. Brentford, and then they play each other. So you're getting, 2 Burnleys, 2 Forests, a Sheffield, a Fulham, and a Palace. And a Brentford. But Brentford's like game week 19, that's what you heard. So as it's not the craziest idea. Like if I'm sat here with a bit of money, I'm likely not looking at Saka, because when we talk about Arsenal later on, like why would I not turn Archer? I've got Yao Pedro, right? Why would I not turn like Archer into like a DCL if I've got the money to spare instead of a defender? I just think that they're undervalued and unlucky. If they would have won 3 or even 2 out of those 4 games I mentioned that they lost that they shouldn't have, I think a lot more people would have Everton in there on their wild card anyway when they played it. Ifs and buts are like candy and nuts. Let's talk about Brighton assets then. For me, it's just Matoma. Everything flows through him. But his partner in crime is who I'm looking at, Estepinian. That double act is just, I think it's going to be fantastic. And the great thing as well is you could bring those 2 players in and they could easily sit in your side until game week 29. Like the fixtures are pretty lovely. And if not, the whole season. If I forced you to have a fit Estepinian and Matoma in your side until game week 38, you wouldn't be like, oh no, this is terrible. Because we've talked about them being fixture proof before, and they're excellent. So Estepinian, I think, is going to be a lot on people's mind. I mean, he was, 55, 60% owned at the start of the season? Like it was crazy high, right? And that's dropped down to 22%. And he's down to 5 million. So he went up to 5.3 and he's back down to 5 purely because of his injury, right? Which obviously makes sense. But with him coming back and the fixtures looking so good for like 18 game weeks, and they are, when we talk about when we move on to the matchup, they're so heavy down that left hand side. And Everton are not good down their right-hand side. So it's they're the 2 for me. Tien, Brighton assets?
Yeah, so I've had Mitoma for a few weeks now, just waiting for the point to come, and hopefully this is the the start of it. But yeah, as I said, he's by far the best option. hoping that Stupinan is coming back sooner rather than later, because he'll be like whoever can jump on him first. A fit as Stupinan with this fixture run will be an opportunity to slightly take a dent of the template. But other than that, I think taking a punt on like a Ferguson or a Pedro is just that. You take a punt and hope that they get some minutes for a short period of time and take the points and run. Because I think over the long term, it's pretty hard to know who's going to play and time that right is pretty difficult. So yeah, I think that's probably all I'm looking at.
Yep. Ryan? Brighton players?
Yeah. So I've got Mitoma in. Again, we'll wait and see if he can deliver. They have dropped attacking numbers wise a bit recently. And now obviously we're still waiting for Estupinan, and there's like a Matty Cash sized shape player in everyone's teams waiting for that Estupinan call. And if it does come before Sheffield United, or the amount of transfers that will be happening for that, I think that's one that a lot of people are looking for. Apart from that, not really, because everyone else is a minutes problem. Adingra, Ferguson, everything is a minutes issue.
Yeah, we've been wax lyrical about Ferguson on here, and I know Will just said in the chat, like, we love Ferguson, we love Wilson, we even very like Darwin. It's all about the minutes. Like we've said, like if you could promise every player every minute, like if there was some magic where all the players in FPL can play all the minutes, right? 90 minutes every week, we'd probably be sat here with the likes of, Darwin and or Ferguson and or Wilson in our sides, right? So it all boils down to minutes. So Lucian's already gave his points on the matchups, so I'll just go through mine. So in terms of Everton against Brighton, Everton are worse at home. It doesn't usually feel like it used to be that way, but they've lost 4 out of their 5 home games, and they were against the sides that they were supposed to have beaten. Like it was Fulham and Luton and Wolves, right? The 3 games that they at home they should have won and they didn't, and then the 4th one was Arsenal, which fair enough, you've lost it 1-0. It's not terrible. So I said before that it felt like they were unlucky, but I also said this before Liverpool, and I know Salah got a massive haul against them, but Everton don't get spanked. I'd never see Everton lose by like more than 2 goals. It just doesn't feel like they're a team that loses their discipline. I can't recall the last time I saw them concede like 4 or 5 goals. I don't see big scores against this side. And I know that they've lost 4 out of the 5 at home, but I still think that they can turn that back into a fortress. Brighton still score a lot of goals, and they still leak a lot of goals. So I just feel like it's going to be a 2-1 win for Brighton. Both teams favour attacking down their left-hand side, especially Brighton, and I expect that to remain the same. They're both all right at defending the right side. Brighton are really good. We said before about the weaknesses down their right-hand side, but they allow the least amount of crosses down their right-hand side and the 3rd best at stopping chances down that right-hand side. And also a way that Brighton limit Everton's shy-ish attack is they are excellent at limiting heading and aerial attacks. So DCL is obviously very good in the air, and defenders like Tarkowski going up are usually a big threat. And I mentioned before about when Brentford played Newcastle, and Brentford are the best at set pieces, and Newcastle were the best at defending set pieces, and Newcastle got the clean sheet. So this feels like another stop. This adds like another stop into Everton's attack. The fact that the aerial threat from, say, Decore or DCL, they're great at doing it. If there's going to be joy for Everton, it's going to be hitting them down the middle, where Brighton are their weakest at defending, and I just see someone like Decore or Onana doing that late run, that late box-to-box run that kind of makes me always recently reminds me of John McGinn at Aston Villa, that they can't track it. So I think if Everton's going to have joy, it's going to be going down the middle in that sort of box-to-box run. I've just seen the thing. You guys have nothing to add for this part, which is great. So we'll just move on. So this time we'll split it up so we can still occasionally hear Lucian's lovely, deep, sickly voice today. Do you know what it reminds me of? And I know it's sad because obviously recently Matthew Perry's passed away, but it reminds me of Friends where Phoebe got sick. In an episode, she got sick and it made her singing voice like very like attractive, and she wanted to always be sick because she kind of sounded like this, right? That's how I feel about you right now, Lucian. It's a wonderful thing to listen to. So
I find it, yeah. Thank you for matching me with Phoebe. I do like being the quirky one in the group.
yeah, she's great. Everyone's low-key favorite. So Newcastle against Arsenal. Change the picture here. So the first point we're going to talk about this is the idea of selling or sacrificing Newcastle defenders. Of course, we know that Botman apparently now could be potentially long-term. I just don't believe anything that Hal says. Like he was even Botman had posted on Instagram during the international break. He posted himself like training. It was something like, back stronger or something like, like can't wait to get out there again. And it's like, oh, and Hal was like, oh yeah, he's with the squad. He's looking, and then bam, he's not even in the squad for the game. And then bam, looks like he could be longer term until after the next international break. And it's like, well, that means Lascelles is in there. So, and the idea that I've said myself that Trippier could leave my side in game week 12. Because that'll allow me to get Saka in. Not for Maddison or Son. I could do Mitoma or Diaby to Saka if I wanted to. The key word there is if. Want, really. And we've discussed doing wants and needs in the past. So, Lucian, we'll start with you then about the idea of benching or selling. I won't talk about Newcastle attack because I think you get the likes of Gordon and Wilson. You just have them and sell them whenever they get injured. But defenders are very popular in FPL, especially Kieran Trippier, and especially recently like Shah and Burn. What are your thoughts on when or if to sell Newcastle defenders?
I would like to comment on the most recent developments of Arsenal and Newcastle's attacks. I think that would probably be what everyone is interested in. For this particular matchup, I own Gabriel and Trippier. I will bench both. Simply because Newcastle's approach here, as well as Arsenal's, have taken such a turn over the last game that I do feel that it warrants both being benched. I'm going to start with Newcastle's defense because a huge factor of this is obviously Arsenal's attack. So, besides the vision, right, of Bukayo Saka isolating himself against Dan Burn 1v1, which is scintillating at its best, I think the biggest issue that no one's really picked up on is the fact that Bukayo Saka does not stay permanently on the right side anymore. This happened right after the first Sheffield United goal. Saka went over to the left and absolutely wrecked havoc. I will not be surprised if he does the same trick against Newcastle, absolutely pressing Trippier's flank because Wolves gave away the template to beating Newcastle. Or at least, without dodgy decisions. Yeah. So, um, that is why I would say bench Newcastle this game. And as for selling, well, I think the most Tian thing to do, I'm gonna coin that, is to sell Newcastle after the Bournemouth game. Just bench them this round, play them for Bournemouth, whoever you have, right? Botman can't be back that fast. So play your Lascelles, play your whoever it is, and then start selling them in phases for whoever that's invoked later on. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that for now.
That was exactly my point about Trippier. Like I could if I wanted to sell him. So I said earlier, but the thing, so Trippier I think is the key one for everyone. Some of us have two Newcastle defenders. I think most will have Trippier over the others, and a few for money reasons. I think Ryan, you're one of them who might have Burn instead of Trippier because of money reasons, right?
No. Now I have Trippier and Lascelles from my wildcard.
Right, okay, so you did get Trippier and it's Lascelles who... That's good news for you because it looks like he could be around for a while. But for me, Lascelles being in the starting lineup is a bad thing. Livramento as well, when he's been on the pitch for Newcastle, has done excellent. And I think he's going to start being trusted to maybe share some of the load in the easier games, which is what you don't want, right? If Newcastle have, let's say they've got Arsenal, PSG, and Sheffield United in a week, right? Livramento, I think, has got the quality and the ability and he's gaining the trust that Trippier is not going to be easily playing 3 games a week now that he's coming to the twilight of his career. So why wouldn't you play Livramento against Sheffield United? That's just an example fixture, right? So I feel as though with Livramento doing well, Botman out longer term, that lowers the clean sheets. Now, I know we get Trippier for his attacking potential as well. He's on set pieces. Sometimes he's like a right winger. I get that. But the bottom line for me personally is a defender needs to have a high potential chance of getting clean sheets. And Newcastle are great defensively, but they are going into a sticky-ish run of fixtures where I said earlier about Estepinian is 1.5 million cheaper. Even more. Trippier's now 7 million. It's because I've had him a long time, but Trippier's 7 million. Estepinian's 5. And I've just said that you can have Estepinian happily in your 11 for 19 game weeks because of the run of fixtures. And you can do a lot of things for 2 million. We've been talking about DCL and Ferguson, right? That's a 6 million Ferguson to an 8 million forward. There's a lot you can do with that money, and I don't think it's a huge downgrade to go from Trippier to Estepinian in game week 12. It feels like that's a move I possibly will be making, and see what I can do with that money, or just keep it, and then when something does happen, then you go. Sometimes I think we have money burning in our pockets, and it's like I need to make sure I've got like no money in the bank. If you're sat there with like 2 million in the bank, and then the template does change, or you see an opportunity to attack the template, you sat there with 2 million in the bank, and you can turn that 6.5 million midfielder into an 8.5 million midfielder, or that 4.5 million Archer into a 7.5 million Darwin and go 3-4-3, right? So I think there's just opportunities and lower risk to sell them. Maybe from this game week, if not, then from game week 12. Tien, Newcastle defense.
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say that no one is looking to buy right, any Newcastle asset at the moment. So basically, assess what you've got and deciding what you want to do with them.
Sorry, Tian. I think people are looking to jump onto Gordon as a Neto replacement. And just as a minor thought.
I think that's a possibility, but I think there are better options than Gordon, due to the fixtures mainly. I mean, he's certainly a viable option, but I think that's the best time to buy. But in terms of like Trippier, I've got Trippier, and I'm not gonna be as brave as Lucien and benched him. I'm just gonna play him, and of course I expect goals in the game, and so there's probably no clean sheets. But we own Trippier not just for the clean sheets, right? So yeah, you never know. In terms of selling them, I think it's certainly not an urgent sell like Trippier, unless you really need the money to do something like right now. I'm definitely not a big fan of selling Trippier for someone this week in one transfer to save the money in the bank and then use that money to buy someone in game week 12. I'd rather just keep him, roll the transfer, and then do the double move in game week 12, because then I know exactly what I need and how much money I need to make off him to do the other move. There will be people who have double move this week and they want to switch. I think it's probably fine to sell as well. It may be a bit early, but that's the thing. Like, the template is so strong. If you want to gain ranks, you might want to take this opportunity to attack the game. And so let's say, if you want a Darwin, for example, and you just need that extra 2 million or something to go from someone like a João Pedro or whoever to a Darwin, right? Then Trippier to make way is not a bad idea at all. If you've got a Lascelles, I think you could just bench him. If you got a Dan Burn, I think that might be in some people's mind to sell Dan Burn because there are some sort of decent options around that price point, like Simicast or Gahey or Wolves defender. I think some people are looking at for the Sheffield United game. Once again, if you got nothing else to do and you really want to make a transfer, then a Burn to a similarly priced defender is not a bad option. But if you have to keep them, I don't think it's the worst idea in the world.
Ryan, selling Newcastle defenders or benching them or?
So I got Trippier on a wildcard 10 purely on the basis that he's the best defender in the game right now. And I was worried that I can't afford him a bit later. Now, the one caveat to this is I think the fixtures get good between that 15 to 19 game week stretch. But the one problem, now that you mentioned Livramento as well, is that game week 15 they play on the Friday. Game week 16 is a midweek Premier League fixture, which they play on the Monday.
Yep.
Against Spurs,
Yep.
which is not good because that could be the more priority game, and then you're missing out on the Friday and potentially the Sunday on the 17th as well against Fulham. Then game week they got like cup fixtures and all in the middle. But game week 18, cup fixtures. They're playing Chelsea in the cup as well, so that's another big fixture in there in the middle. Then game week 18 they've got the prime Luton fixture on Christmas Eve, and on Boxing Day they got Forest. So I don't know how Trippier is going to handle all of this, which is what I'm slightly worried about. But those are also the good fixtures that I want him for. So I'm in a bit of a pickle.
That was exactly the point I was saying. Like, Livramento will probably get the cup. Like, it's one of them, like, City do it as well. Like, if that team got you further in the cup, you let them have the cup, right? The League Cup. But this is exactly the point I was saying. Like, you're entirely, like, you want them for Everton, Fulham, Luton, Forest. But even if you take the cup out, you've got the 16th of December is Fulham, the 23rd is Luton, the 26th is Forest, and then it's Liverpool City. So you can't even say, okay, he can play Spurs on the 11th and then Forest on the 26th, but he still might not play on the 26th because on the Monday Night Football, Tuesday our time, he's got Liverpool, and then a couple of weeks later he's got City. So Fulham, Luton, Forest, Liverpool, City, if you just take it down to Fulham, Luton, Forest, Liverpool, like, he might only play 2 of those 4 games. Again, it just depends on how. Like, Howe seems to play his best 11, and, Trippier's a professional. He'll play every game he's probably fit for. But if he was the left back, that he'd be playing because they don't have a good suitable player. But Livramento is a more attacking right back, and they attack down that right side. Him against Fulham and Luton, or Fulham and Forest, or Luton and Forest, or whatever, why wouldn't you try Livramento? He's an amazing player who had one terrible injury. So yeah, I think you're exactly right. So would you just hold him and hope he starts like 3 of the 4?
I would hold him and assess it game week by game week. It depends on game state, not game state. It depends on league state as well, I would say.
And
On where, yeah, exactly. So you have to assess it each week, see how Newcastle's situation is. They are picking up quite a few injuries as well as each week progresses. So you kind of it's probably a week by week thing in terms of that.
Yeah, fair. So Arsenal attack worth investing. So we said earlier in the show about sort of like sideways moves. I said, like, I kept the Spurs boys because I just didn't see, especially for -4, what the point was going from Maddison or Son to Saka. And I've banged that drum about the low XG, the lack of big chances that Arsenal create. They had like 0 against Nottingham Forest. I've also said about how and Lucian said, like, they earned it. I'm not saying they didn't earn the penalties, but they've had 6 penalties in 10 games, which obviously even hires up. It makes the XG stat even higher than what it is because they're having penalties inside that XG stat. So this isn't just like and Spurs, by the way, have had no penalties. Spurs have had 0, and they're way above them. So I know you can't just take penalties out of XG, but if you did, they would be even lower down in terms of like chances and XG and stuff. So just for this one, I would only be looking at Saka, and the key sad reason would be rank protection, because we've seen in those ranks from earlier in the stream that Saka is strong across like multiple template teams, and the fact that he's over 50% owned in the game, and that's going to keep going higher because he's got Burnley, Brentford, Wolves, and Luton coming up next. Defensively speaking, they are the second best defense behind City, so I would be looking at Zinchenko, who I think is 4.9 million. So I don't think Zinchenko is a bad option, but there are better explosive defenders elsewhere. I wouldn't be going Gabriel. So I'm surprised so many people went Gabriel and didn't go Zinchenko. I know it's like 0.2 million difference, but yeah, that surprised me. But I'm not saying that they're not worth the attack, but I'm looking at my midfield. I've got Matoma, Diaby, Son, Maddison, Salah. Like, is Saka going to tick along nicely? Yes. Is he going to destroy any of my 5 midfielders that I have? No. He'll tick along nicely, but the fixtures are changing, so it's sad. But if I was going to bring him in, it would probably be a defensive transfer, not one where I'm like, oh, Saka's going to get 10 points every week. So I'm not saying that they're not investable. They've got a great run of fixtures and they're fantastic defensively. But I think there's just a better attacking option in terms of hitting higher ceilings, lower floors. Lucian, Arsenal attack?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the irony here was that we discovered finally Kai Havertz's best role is replicating Odegaard's. So it is almost certain that they will never play in the same side. But still, the highlight of the show is going to be Bukayo Saka. I really look forward to this matchup because I think Newcastle will not see it coming. Only because they have run out of central midfielders to cover for Tonali and Anderson. I think Joelinton and Longstaff will do a job, but it's reminiscent of 2022, where they are functional, but they are extremely limited. We saw it against Wolves. Like Anderson and Joelinton got into fantastic positions. They got the ball, and they just cannot finish. So, I mean, it's all about domination because I do feel that there are two ways to look at this game. It's either, the patient back and forth type that will end extremely boring, or it will be fast paced, it will be blood and thunder, and that is what I am banking on. The Newcastle counter press to trouble Arsenal, and Arsenal, just as they did against Man City, can also counter press Newcastle down. And that's why I fully believe that this is a chaotic game that will favor Arsenal, especially Bukayo Saka in that left half space.
Ian, Arsenal attack?
So I decided against going for Saka last game week because as you know, as you said, going from Spurs to Saka wasn't that straightforward. So yeah, I'm really hoping that Lucian is wrong in this instance, that Saka will be kept quiet in these games, and I mean Newcastle away is always a tough game, right? So there might be goals, but there's not going to be a lot of goals. So even if Saka, get involved in one return, it's not the end of the world. So yeah, for me, it's just wait and watch. And decide whether I really need him next game week, which is at home against Burnley, and that's going to be the key. And I've seen a lot of people buying Nketiah. Right, I think he's among the top transfer thing as well, and
I know
and
what's
obviously
coming.
it's always happened when someone just hit a hat trick. But as I've always said, you try to buy the player before they haul, not after. Because after they haul is probably a bit too late. But of course, next week if he's still looking like playing for a few more games, because I think Jesus is predicted to be out for at least another weeks or 4 or 5 weeks or something. So there's still opportunities there for him. And if he's still looking good, and if he's still playing for the few more games, then Nketiah could be an option next game week. But I think buying him for this game week it's just knee jerky, in my opinion.
It reminds me of game week 1 when Isaac scored 2 goals in that 5-1 home win against Villa, and he was like the first price rise of FPL. And game 2, Man City away. Game 3, Liverpool home. It's just like but everyone's just like, oh my god, he's got 2 goals. He's like the best striker in FPL right now. He's gone up as well in price. And then it's like City, Liverpool, and Brighton were the next 3 games where he got 2, 2, and 2. But it happens every week. It's like the most transferred in player pretty much every game week. Blanks like a curse. Ryan, Arsenal attack.
Arsenal attack, I've got Saka. Again, like you said, rank protection mainly. Their attack has dropped significantly over the last, I'm looking like last 6 game weeks. XG non-pen is pretty poor. Their big chances created. There are only 6 teams that have done worse than them. And that's Fulham, Wolves, Burnley, Bournemouth, and Crystal Palace and Sheffield United. Every other team in the league has done significantly better in terms of creating big chances for them in Arsenal. Now, obviously, you could say they've had 3 tough fixtures in the last 6, so maybe fixtures breed from and maybe it improves going forward. But I don't think you need to jump, double, triple Arsenal attack per se. It's not really needed. Nketiah, I've owned him last season. He's a very frustrating player to own. He will get this 1 game week, 2 game weeks of really good, and then he'll shit the bed for the rest of the time until Gabriel Jesus comes in and then takes his spot. So he's a frustrating player to own. So if you're buying him, keep that in mind, because he hogs a lot of the chances like Darwin, but I think Darwin is a bit more clinical than him at times. So yeah, that's the one thing with Nketiah. But yeah, I wouldn't go for him right now, especially against Newcastle. Maybe like Tian said, Burnley, you could have a look.
Yeah, so with the eye test, they look good because they have a lot of possession. They play nice football. But then if you really, really look at Arsenal's attack and you combine it with the stats, so we talked about XG before, right? It was last week when we said about like what does XG mean, and even if you take XG out of the equation, it's a combination of stats. That's how it's looking at key stats. I've talked before about like touches in the box means nothing to me for my striker. I never look at how many times they've touched the ball with their foot inside the 18-yard box. But you look at key stats for attack, like big chances, shots in the box, chances created, right? You look at these sort of stats to see, is my team attacking? Even like possession in the final third or whatever. And Arsenal lack massively across the board. This isn't a case of like, all right, yeah, they've only had like 2 big chances, but they did have 12 shots in the box and like 6 of them were blocked. It's not even that. Like, they are mid-table in terms of attack. And then you've got the likes of Brighton, who I know aren't doing it great at the moment, who are just... Arsenal are 5th for goals, and they're joint 3rd, right? But the likes of Villa and Brighton and Liverpool and City and Spurs, even though Spurs and City have scored fewer goals... Stat-wise, they've earned it. They're about where they should be. But Arsenal are just like, I'd rather have a City, a Spurs, a Brighton, a Villa player rather than an Arsenal one, because it just feels like they're overachieving right now. Because all across the board, it just doesn't look particularly great. But they still do it. They still get the goals. They still tick along. Is Saka the second best midfielder in the game? Or first? Like 4th. He's 4th, right? You've got Salah, Son, and Mbeumo, and then Saka, just ahead of Maddison. And he's 50% owned. And we said about fixtures, right? They've not had a really tough run of fixtures in the opening 10 game weeks. Like, Forest, Palace, Fulham, United, sorry boys, Everton, Spurs in terms of against their defence isn't a bad fixture. Bournemouth, Chelsea and Sheffield United. So City, they played City in game week 8 and they won 1-0. But they've not had a bad run of fixtures. They've not had like a really difficult group of fixtures there. Like, who would you, if you had any player, not an Arsenal player, if you had any player against Forest, Fulham, Everton, Bournemouth, Sheffield United, half of those games, if you had any player playing against them this game week, would you not expect or hope for some return from a striker or midfielder? Like, if I had DRB or Matoma against those 5 teams, I'd be like, this is a good fixture. So it just feels like until I start to see an excellent team who deserve the results that they're getting. But in terms of FPL, like, they're not showing me something that makes me think, oh, like, I shouldn't have been and ahhing about bringing in an Arsenal player at home to Sheffield United. That should be a given for a top 4 team, right? If it was the other way around, do I want Son at home to Sheffield United, or do I want Saka away to Chelsea? That should be like, well, of course I'm going to have Son. I had Sheffield United at home, and I'm still like, oh, I can maybe wait. And that's like the best fixture you can have. And they did go and thump them. And again, he still, apart from Nketiah, didn't get a massive haul. Anyway, Lucian, any points about the matchup then that you want to say before we move on?
This will be decided through the flanks. Anthony Gordon will have a field day against Ben White. I think it has to be stated that Ben White on his lonesome is not enough to cover individual matchups. I mean, even Marcus Rashford has done well against Ben White. So really, it's just a matter of time. Is whether Arsenal's left hit Newcastle's right first, or whether Newcastle's left hits Arsenal's right first. It's all about game state. Boys, it's really all about game state. And I just cannot stress enough that I do feel that, all those weeks Rob has mentioned before, all those weeks before that you guys have mentioned about the poor stats, really just comes down to the fact that they have spent 7 weeks trying to shoehorn Kai Havertz in everywhere. From the left half space, to the number 9, to the number 10, to the left wing. It has not worked until Sheffield United, where he had to rest Odegaard. That's the cost of having a good game from Kai Havertz, because it shifted everyone else across the pitch so well. That's all I'd say.
Like when you buy a bad pair of shoes that were expensive and you kind of feel like you have to wear them. That's what Kai Havertz is. He's a bad pair of shoes that Arsenal have to wear to justify the price that they've paid for him, which is outrageous. I've completely agreed with you on one part and disagreed with you on the other. I also agree. I like home advantage for Newcastle. It's a tough place to go. They're very passionate fans. And I completely agree. I think it'll be decided on the Arsenal wingers versus the fullback, particularly Dan Burn against Saka. I have a feeling, here's my gut for the week, Dan Burn's going to score a header. But that is, I completely agree. I think it's going to be key down the sides. I think Trippier can deal with any player. Dan Burn against Saka, it's going to be a bit of a tough one. Interesting points, though. Newcastle have scored at least 2 goals over the last 5 games. Arsenal have done the same, but 4 of the last 5. Martinelli's speed and freedom, I think, could be a key to maybe pull Trippier out, because Trippier's not the fastest. But I just think it's the thing I disagree is like the goals and how it's going to be. I can completely understand benching, because my prediction is 1-1. I think it's just going to be a tight, low-scoring affair. Both teams don't want to blink first. It's a sort of a Champions League position. Arsenal are trying to win the league. Newcastle are probably trying to just get top 4 again. And I just think it's 2 fantastic defenses and 2 very good attacks, and I think the defenses are going to beat out the attacks. So I think both are good. I know Arsenal get the goals. Newcastle have an excellent attack. Newcastle have a great defense. Arsenal have a great defense. And I just think like Arsenal's defense will beat out Newcastle's attack, and Newcastle's defense will beat out Arsenal's attack. But I don't think it's going to be 0-0, because both teams still find a way to score a goal. So I'm going to go for 1-1. I don't particularly see an Arsenal win because I like to see Newcastle play at home, and they're very strong there. Tien?
Yeah, I think I would agree that it's gonna be a tight affair because these are top sides in terms of like they know what they're doing, and I'm just wondering whether what Lucian saw in the Sheffield United game was more of a Sheffield United
Than for
rather than
Newcastle.
Ars-
And
rather
Arsenal.
than Arsenal doing something I don't know. Like you may be right that it's gonna be repeatable or not, but Newcastle at home is a very strong very hard place to come and play and get a result out of it. I mean they've beaten Man City as well. Of course it was in the cup, but it was a strong City team. I think so. Um, so yeah, 1-1, 1-0 either side, or I'm hoping for a 0-0. But yeah, probably unlikely. But as a Trippier owner and starter, I'm hoping for a 0-0.
Yeah. I'm going to take back my Dan Burn header shout. Just because I've just double checked they're both excellent defensive. Arsenal have conceded only 5 chances. They're the best at defending heading opportunities this season. They've only conceded 5, which is twice as good as the second best, which is Man City. Put that into perspective, Sheffield United have conceded 40 headed opportunities. West Ham with 35, Bournemouth and Luton above 30. Arsenal have conceded just 5 headers, which makes sense because they've also conceded the fewest chances in the league down their left-hand side and the fewest amount of chances conceded down their right-hand side. So it's interesting about like the Ben White point. Maybe they're just getting round him and cutting inside. But in terms of like chances conceded down their flanks, Arsenal are literally the best in the league. They're mid-table down the middle. So maybe a Bruno Guimaraes hunt down the middle might help. But in terms of defending their flanks, Arsenal, both flanks are the best in the entire league. And that obviously replicates with the fact that they've only conceded 5 headed chances all season. So I take back my Dan Burn header. Instead, he's going to score a volley. Ryan, your thoughts then on the matchup before we move on?
Well, when you said Dan Burn head, I was hoping for, it's got to come from a Trippier cross, has it? And then I was like, assist points, yes.
Well, the volley will come from there.
Yeah, the volley, unfortunately, we don't know who's going to pass it to him. But assist, I mean, like if what Lucian said was correct, and in terms of the flanks, well, I've got Gordon and I've got Saka in my team. So hopefully both work. When you mentioned that they're strong on the flanks, I don't know. I haven't seen. We need to see where they concede their chances as well. Are they like pot shots that go in because either Ramsdale at the start wasn't keeping those shots in? The other thing is it depends on who plays that central spot for Newcastle as well, and how long Callum Wilson is fit for. Like how many minutes can he play? Because if Gordon, we saw against United, Gordon did play down that central spot as well. So I don't know, something to kind of monitor and see. And one thing, I guess, with the Sheffield United game, I don't know. I haven't watched enough of Arsenal, but people have been saying that Odegaard takes too many shots now and isn't as creative as he used to be last season. So is that kind of impacting that? I don't know. Lucy might be able to clarify on that, but that will also maybe play a part in this game in terms of how Arsenal operate, and maybe that explains why their XG numbers are also pretty low because there aren't that many chances being created.
I mean, all I'll say is that the XG numbers have dipped for Arsenal. They started quite strong at the beginning, and they only dipped because they tried to fit Jorginho into the midfield. And against Sheffield United, they played ESR. So I would say, yeah, it comes down to who Arsenal plays in midfield. Yes, I don't think Newcastle's midfield will change because neither Willock nor Lewis Hall have played their way into the side just yet.
I just feel so stupid for not looking more into Arsenal's defense. Like we knew how good they are, and I know people brought Gabriel in, which I completely get because second best for goals conceded, I said earlier about combining stats, right? Fewest headed chances, fewest chance conceded on both sides. Second best for expected goals conceded as well. And they are like bang on the delta for that. Like they're not overachieving. They are like literally 0.01. They are perfect. They are exactly where they're supposed to be. So it's not like, oh, they're massively overachieving and it's got to even out. Like the Arsenal defense with these fixtures is making me think of going back to the 4-5-1 and probably bringing Zinchenko and Estepinian into the side. Because their defense is crazy. All right, let's review our 4 game week player picks. 2 popular players on the screen right now in Watkins and DRB. We're going to start with a Villa player. At the back, though, Tien, you were the defender pick from game week 7, 8, 9, and 10. Who was your pick for those 4 game weeks?
Not these two, but the other Villa player, the popular one, Matty Cash. So he got 6-2-2-5, so that's 15 points over 4 game weeks, including one pretty lucky clean sheet, because I think he was subbed off like just a few minutes before they conceded, right? And then he got 1 assist against Brighton. So in a way, I think that is somewhat disappointing for what we expected of him and what he was sort of putting up before that, like attacking stats wise as well. And so I predicted over the four weeks 2 clean sheet, got 1, and potentially 2 attacking returns, he got 1. The attacking stats were okay, but only against Brighton and Luton. The other 2 games he wasn't as involved. So I think you could argue that he was unlucky not to get at least another assist against Luton, because that beautiful ball to Watkins that he should have scored, that big chance that he created as well. But overall, I felt a little bit underwhelming because I think we expected a little bit more from him.
Yeah, so we kind of have a traffic light way of deciding. So in terms of, so we say as well, we don't look at the like final results. We look at like the fixtures they had and the stats that they posted. I would just probably put this as the yellow verdict, because you're right, like it looks like, if you take away every return, it looks like 2 clean sheets, 2 blanks, and no attacker returns if you sort of look at it defensively as well, but with the points that he scored. So yeah, if we've all had Cash, I think. Like almost everyone we know has Matty Cash for quite a few game weeks now, and we're not sad at those points because he's got 2 returns out of 4, and I know he's 5.2 million to buy now, but most of us got him for under 5 million, right? So he's decent value, and fixtures are still looking good for it. He's not a bad pick per se. I think we all just feel a little bit we wanted a bit more. Like, he's not done a bad job, but we thought he's good form. Sometimes he's like right mid or right wing. He looks good before those game weeks, and maybe we could have liked a little bit more. Ryan?
Yeah, there was that one big chance missed as well. I think that was the Wolves game, if I'm not mistaken, and we're looking at the Luton game as well. So maybe there could have been points. I still think there is points to be had, and if you got him early, you got him on a cheap as well, which is kind of good. So it's could have been good, but unfortunate in small margins.
Yeah. Lucian? Verdict? Good? Meh?
Sorry, I was just looking for Tien's logic picking Cash, right? Because he said decent fixtures, highest non-penalty XGI, and the whole 2 CS plus 1 to 2 attacking returns. I feel that this was a massive green, considering the circumstances that we could not foresee. Yeah, it's just difficult to tell how Emery changes things up front, because Cash shone brightest when Villa played their 3-5-2. And in this particular case, over the last 4 games, they just did not, because Zaniolo came into such prominence that it permanently kept Villa in that 4-2-3-1 setup. So, I mean, that's okay, because you still got the 2 CS that you expected, even though one was an early sub off against Brighton. Sorry, against Luton. Sorry. And I mean, if you ask me, even the goal they conceded against Luton was pretty unfortunate. Nothing of their doing. So yeah, I'm completely okay with this process of picking defenders with Cash being involved, because I do feel that the XGI is there. Um, and for me, the eye test proves that, yeah, I mean, Cash is going to be within the chances, and the CS is a bonus. Sorry, Rob, I have the complete opposite view with you, where defenders you buy must have attacking output. So,
I'm not
yeah,
that one. I
no,
always
no,
look
you're
at
the opposite.
clean. I look
No,
at clean
you're
sheets. Yeah.
yes, correct. So I'm saying that the clean sheets are the bonus, and the attacking
Uh,
output is the dominant factor. That's how we pick defenders. That's why Trippier is so popular. Forget clean sheets. Trippier's 3 assists against Sheffield United
Tribune
was
as
what we
well.
wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
but you can also but Trippier got the assist, but who got the goals? Two of the defenders, two of the centre
I'd,
backs. So you can't
you'd
rely
still
on
pick,
that.
yeah, you still pick Trippier any other day, and that's why I don't pick Botman or Burn. It's yeah.
You know, I'm going to change this. I'm going to say it's a green actually. Yeah, because I'm just re-looking at the stats from game week 7 to 10 defensive stats, and actually Villa are like top 3 to top 5 over those 4 game weeks. For your key metrics like big chances conceded, shots on target conceded, shots in the box conceded, right? And expected goals conceded. And it was almost Man City-esque where they smashed teams to 1. It was 6-1, 1-1, yeah, 4-1, 3-1. It was just one of them where it just felt like it was a Man City-esque run of they're scoring lots of goals. This is great, and they conceded 1 goal all the time. So yeah, I think it's a green pick. Personally,
It was 3 home games out of the 4 as well. So they smashed them all at home.
Yeah, I think we all just think like we just would have liked a bit greedy. We just liked a little bit more. Just give us another assist or another clean sheet, and we'd have all sat here and gone green, no problem. Next up, Salah. I don't think this one's gonna take a lot of discussing, Ryan.
1 started off bad, but oh well. 15, 16, and 8. And after that, it's just become like must-have, captaincy, blah, 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 whatever you throw into that as well.
Now,
so, yeah.
I might be a bit controversial here. I would put this as yellow. Now, please remember that I think the last game week he's just had against Notts Forest was the best I've seen him play in a while. And remember that we don't just look at the fact that he's got a ridiculous return on his points. He's got 2 big holes here, right? But let me explain why. Against Everton, he was so lucky to come away with 16 points. He absolutely did not deserve to get 16 points in that match. He scored a penalty, and he scored after Mikalenko was taken off right at the end, where Everton were trying to get an equaliser, and they've hit them on the break, and Darwin's given him the chance. Now, I know luck makes points or whatever, but against Nottingham Forest, he probably deserved 16 points. So that I agree with. But against Everton, so 1 point against Spurs, not in the game, they lost 2-1, he blanked. We all agree, fine, that's fair. 15 points against Brighton, it's another penalty and a goal at the end, right? Like, I don't think and I've owned him. This is not like a non-owner, non-captainer going against him. I mean, I captained him. I think I'm a captain this week or whoever, right? But I've had him, and he's given me the points. It's wonderful. It's not like, I'm a non-owner and I'm all bitter about it like I am with Umbuemo all the time. But against Brighton, he did not deserve 15 points. And against Everton, he did not deserve 16 points. So
I would say Forrester, he probably didn't deserve. He got lucky at the end.
but he played really well. Like he
Yes, he
was
did, yeah.
involved in the 2 goals before his. Like one, he was. It's called like a hockey assist, right? When you're the assistant, the assistant, right?
Yeah.
And especially Liverpool's second goal when he did a lovely dink through and they cut it across. But the first one, if Darwin, it was Darwin who didn't put the chance away.
Yeah.
So Salah put him in. Darwin should have scored. He deserved the assist. He did a beautiful ball over, and was it Soberslai who cut it across? It was to Darwin, right?
Darwin,
so Soberslai could have done it himself or whatever, but Salah was integral to that goal with a beautiful bit of play. So he got lucky with the goal. Completely agree. But you could have said he could have had 2 assists before. Like he deserved some. So just my argument for this is, one, he's a lot of money. He's 12.8 billion. So you've got sacrifices or whatever. But taking that into account, he deserved his points. He probably should have got a double-digit haul against Nottingham Forest. But I know he's got a 15 and 6 pointer back-to-back game week. But I don't think he deserved it. I don't think he played particularly well in those games. Half of the goals were penalties. Again, yeah, we choose players for penalties, but I mean, you don't pay 12.8 million for a penalty taker.
I think the one counter argument is, I think at the time I picked him, we were looking for a way into Liverpool's attack, and we just didn't know who to go for.
Because
he was the safe. Yes, exactly. He was the safest bet, and that's why I went there.
Yeah. Oh, he's a sensible pick, and he's a great FPL player. I'm just saying, like, it just feels like those 2 mega holes that he's got. I don't think he deserved it. Lucian, your thoughts on Salah?
Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? I don't think Salah is ever the integral part of Liverpool's process. I think the problem here is that we all assume that Salah's the talisman of the side, when truly in this side, he's not. So I think I would give it a green only because of Ryan's logic as he stated here, because, you know, I want to read the itemized receipts, right? He says that, it's picking Salah because they are capable of scoring multiple goals a game. I do feel that if it weren't for the 2 red cards conceded, like, you know, they would have picked up a return against Spurs. I think it was Salah's assist for Luis Diaz's offside goal anyway, right? So anyway, So from an attacking point of view in the next 4, I think process-wise, everything assumed about Liverpool came true. And, you know, Salah's points, Salah's goals, I fully agree with Rob that most of them were lucky. And I think that's how much influence luck has in FPL. So Salah is unfortunately one of those guys you pick because he is in the position to get lucky. Because Salah has so many potential avenues of returns, you know? Like if Liverpool attack well down the right side, Salah's involved. If Liverpool attack well down the left, then Salah's the creator, or Salah's one of the targets in the box as he showed against West Ham. So I think in that sense, Salah puts himself in, like, you know, right place, right time, right? And he's just benefited from all of those matchups, being 90 minutes and all that. Yeah.
Oh, we all know he's a great pick, and he's arguably the best FPL player of all time. It's just looking back at the 4 weeks, I just think really lucky. Tien?
I have to agree with Lucian here as well, because it's not like you can't just change the narrative, right? You know, like Brian didn't pick him because he was thinking that Salah was playing well and entertaining to watch and stuff. Like, yes, I agree, he didn't play well in some of those games, and he was lucky to get the returns. But that was what Brian predicted. He predicted that Liverpool's going to score a lot of goals and Salah was going to involve whether they play well or not. That was not part of his logic. And the fact that he was nailed and playing 90 and on pens and all that sort of thing. I think the logic to pick him was clearly there. Everything came out pretty much as we expected. So yeah, sometimes it's just like, yep, the outcome. You could sit here and say, well, it's, you know, so lucky to get 2 pens and some lucky goals that the defense just decided to gift him. But that's going to be part of the conversation as well. Like, we can't just ignore points altogether. Like, yes, it's not the only thing that we look at, but that was what we predicted we predicted something to happen. We expected certain things, and if most of those things that we expected and we predicted to happen, then I think that's a good logic. It's a green, yes.
Yeah, it's a green. Just like I said, and also like Ryan always pointed out, it's like Liverpool always seem to score 3 goals. And if Liverpool are scoring 3 goals, like let's say you didn't watch the game and you're doing something and it pops up Liverpool 3-2, whatever, right? If you open the app and Salah's not done anything, you're shocked. Just like if City score 3 goals and Haaland does nothing, you're shocked, right? So I think it's a fair pick. Mine was Watkins. Got on him just before the big train started. He kicked off with 23 points. 5, 11, and 2. Funnily enough, the most enticing fixture of Luton was where he blanked. He put up an XG of 1.33. He missed 2 big chances, and he was the biggest XG underperformer of all Premier League players for game week 10. And it's
Matty catch assist. So close.
Yeah, and that's it. So, I mean, we can debate it, but that's my justification. It was just I picked him after they beat Chelsea away from home, and I knew that we're going to have Brighton, Wolves, West Ham, and Luton. I went for. So, yep. Lucian, green, red, yellow.
Yeah,
Watkins.
green, of course. I mean, ticking along nicely is what you said 4 weeks ago, and that's exactly what he did.
Well, he did more actually than what I expect. I didn't think he was going to go and get a hat trick and all that lot. But
I'm just trying to assess your logic, right? And if you have a return rate of 3 games in 4, then that's ticking along nicely, regardless of how many points you score. As long as it's more than 5, yeah, great. That's a green.
Yeah, he and over those 4 game weeks, Aston Villa had the second most amount of attempts, most attempts inside the box, second most amount of big chances, and the most amount of goals in the 4 game weeks. And in terms of XG, they were 5th. Oh, yep. Tien, just a quick green and move on.
No, it's green, but it highlights the fact that you didn't expect him to get that 23 points, but then you expected him to score against like Luton and like it's so this is a prime example of like luck or variance or whatever we'll call it, sort of like even out.
Yeah.
And I mean, we rarely see it like being sort of even out within this
4
short
weeks.
time frame.
Yeah.
But it actually did even out, because even against West Ham as well, I think he missed some big chances. Even like he got that 11 point, but he could have got so much more.
Yeah.
So that 23 points unexpectedly that he got kind of like sort of get even out with the blank and the lower points in the other game. So I think it ticked all the boxes in terms of like ticking along nicely.
Ryan?
Very nicely indeed.
Oh, green.
Yeah.
He's returned.
I don't think it's going to be much different because, funnily enough, this was the week 3. Like, we've had weeks where it's like 3 Newcastle out of the 4. This was the week where we're all like, we're going for Villa because Lucian was the wildcard pick and he was the RB. Funnily enough, I've got the RB, and I chose Watkins because obviously I was before that week, and then you've chosen Diaby and I had him, and so Lucian, Diaby, your points for him?
Never in doubt, man. I think the injury, the rumored injury, whatever it was, scuppered a lot of his chances and contributed heavily to the 2 points in the middle. But guess who scored against Luton? Anyway, that aside, I think lesson learned from all of this is that you do not underestimate Wolves. Never ever. So because that result aside, I think Villa did everything they could to win every game in those 4 matches. So, I mean, the only error I felt I made here was, putting down the Wolves. But otherwise, Luton's deficiencies, even the fact that Diaby played between the lines against West Ham, that was like spot on because in that first half itself, everything was Diaby receiving between the West Ham lines in that right half space and just playing Watkins again and again. So I can't complain. Like, congrats, Rob. But I would say this much, like prior to the Luton game, him having 8-2-2 did not look like a good pick, especially after the injury news. So I was sweating bullets. Yeah.
But I brought him in for Bruno in game week 2 because I was like, guys, he's a striker. He's not a midfielder. He's out of position striker for at the time 6.5 million in a side that I know that and remember I brought him in on the back of getting thumped 5-1 against Newcastle because I just saw it in him and I saw it in Villa that it was just the wrong day but not the wrong team. Surprised that was his first goal at home. It just felt like he done more, but he gets a lot of assists and missed assists for Watkins a lot of the time. But I just think it's a green. But I'll try and move us on a bit faster. But Jen, thoughts about Diaby?
Yeah, no, it's a green certainly. Everything that Lucien said, just tick all the boxes. Yeah, he could have got more returns against West Ham as well. So yeah, just decent point for his price. Play well, so yeah, can't complain.
Ryan?
Green. Yeah. Apart from the Wolves game, the West Ham game, Watkins passed it directly to Watkins, and he didn't score. Criminal.
There's
But
been
yeah,
a few like that.
Yeah.
And as a Diaby owner, I noticed it even more, just how many times like Watkins has put it wide or hit a post. And it's like,
but
Oh.
green. Yeah.
going on to the picks for this week, we'll try and go through these a bit all too much. So Tien's defender, Ryan midfielder, I'm a forward, Lucien, any player to choose from the game. And he's going to shock people. So stay on for at least Lucien's pick before we finish with a quick captaincy chat. So Tien, who's your defender for the pick?
So for defender, I'm just back to basics again. Just playing the fixtures. So Crystal Palace, I think, have the best defensive fixtures in the next 4 on paper, at least. So Burnley, Everton, Luton, and West Ham. They've been putting up decent enough defensive stats, sort of mid-table. So Mark Gahey is my pick. 4.6 million is still very cheap. Even if you just get 2 clean sheets in 4, I think he's potentially in the bonus when they get clean sheet as well, because Crystal Palace can't score goals these days. So any defenders that have clean sheets and doing stuff in the games like he does, he'll be in the point. So yeah, that's gonna be my pick.
And we're being good about Palace this year. I mean, I started the season tripled up on them with with the goalkeeper and the defender, right? Because they're just so good defense. Like they're the best value defense, really. Oh, maybe Newcastle are, but they're very good, and they're top of the fixture ticker for the defense over the next. What's your expectation or hope for this one? 2 clean sheets.
2 clean sheets in 4, yeah.
Fair enough. Right, I almost said you
and
picked
some
there.
bonus points, yeah.
A couple of bonus.
Yeah,
It's
a couple
possible.
bonus points.
It's possible.
Yeah. He's second. He's second, just behind Anderson. Yeah, for bonus points.
Yeah. And usually Anderson because of goals. That's why he gets more bonus.
Yeah.
Ryan, you're the midfielder. Who's your pick for this?
Yeah, I've got Mitoma. So now there are 4 teams who have good fixtures on paper in the next 4 game weeks. That's West Ham, Brighton, United, and who's the other one that I looked at? Crystal Palace. I'm hell not picking United in terms of fixtures. They're very bad. Crystal Palace attacking wise are sadly numbers are a bit low, very low, extremely low. But they have Eze and Olise coming back, so maybe that we'll talk about the wildcard pick later. And then there was, who did I say? West Ham. West Ham. Maybe Bowen could do well, but I've gone for Mitoma because Brighton are way more attacking compared to West Ham. So that's the main reason I've gone. And they've had the midweek rest this week. They do have Ajax next week, which they kind of need to win. But Ajax are currently last in Eredivisie and are fighting relegation. So I'm hoping that Brighton should be fine in terms of rotation, and Mitoma is the talisman in that team. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm the forward, and I'm literally the same issue as you, because the next 4 game weeks, I don't want a Palace striker. I did think about Edward coming back into it, but I was like, Sheffield United, Forest, West Ham, Brighton, even Ferguson as striker, I can't rely on like minutes. And I didn't want to just go for Watkins again. It's foolish, it's silly, but I want to do a little fun. I've gone for Darwin. I think I've already picked Darwin.
Yeah. Well.
Oh yeah, this is the second time I've picked. Next week we're going to talk about me and Darwin, and I'm back. I'm back with the man. He's been the forward I've picked. I mean, again, I could have just said Watkins, but no. I'm worried about his first 11 place, but Liverpool are joint second for goals scored. Darwin fit in the side, even off the bench. I think he's done enough to get the start. Like, I think he's doing pretty well. He's just scored in midweek, which I don't like because he played in the cup, and I would have preferred if he didn't, because that worries me about his start for the weekend. But he's an incredibly effective sub who causes chaos off the bench. Like, it's almost as if, like, if he's not starting, sometimes you're happier. Like, Tien, you knew Darwin was benched, but you kept him, right? A few weeks ago?
Yes.
So you knew he was benched, and you could have moved him out, and you're like, no, because he's one of the few players that it's like Wilson. If you own Wilson and he's on the bench, and you know he's going to come on at 60, 65 minutes against Sheffield United or Luton or Burnley or Bournemouth or something like that, you'll hold it because he's great off the bench. 5 attempts inside the box. In the last few weeks, 2 big chances, 1 goal, 1 assist. If he gets the minutes, I'm looking at goals at Luton and Fulham because I think they're bullyable. And then that just means City, I don't know if he's going to start to put pressure on City's defence, or Klopp will go for Gakpo to try and hold the ball up a bit more and have like that kind of false 9-ish kind of striker. And Brentford is like the 50-50 coin toss. But I'm looking at 2 goals in 4 games, which I think is reasonable because he is like what 7.5 million. If I'm sticking my neck out, I'll say 3 goals in 4 games. But any striker who scores 3 goals in 4 games is on a good streak, right? Even if Haaland scored 3 and 4, it's pretty good. So yeah, that's who I'm going for. Lucian, any player, let me just stress this, any player for any value in any position or any team is available for the wild card pick. Lucian, who have you gone for?
Every week we talk about Ollie Watkins. I mean, last week when I was deciding between Ferguson and somebody else, right? I mean, the first name that comes to mind is always Watkins. And I was just thinking, what's the criteria of picking a wildcard player, right? Number one, you have the option of picking literally anybody in the game, and the purpose of this wildcard pick is to, number one, suit the situation of literally owning any player in the game, where you have to come up with something beyond the mainstream. I mean, I think there has to be reason behind it, and honestly, if I did the Tien thing and went back to basics, I would have picked Bukayo Saka up against Dan Burn with 3 good fixtures on the horizon. This Newcastle is a false, difficult fixture in my opinion. But just like Tien, I've gone back to basics and I have looked at Palace's next 3 fixtures. They are pretty good defensively, and they also have Burnley and Luton up next, which are poor offensively. Oh, sorry, like in terms of conceding chances. So, I mean, everyone talks about how Luton concede so many chances from their left side and like Salah, 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 Salah. I mean, when Crystal Palace plays Luton, who does the same thing? On the right side. Jordan, are you? And this is going to be amazing. Guys, this is going to be amazing. I mean, again, all right, this is suited for the purpose of replacing an injured Pedro Neto. I only tout this as a 4-week, maybe even a 3-week or a 5-week punt, because the next 5, right? I mean, it's unfortunate that we're doing 4, but the next 5 read Burnley, Everton, Luton, West Ham, and Bournemouth. It can't be any better. So if Eze or Olise were available, I'd happily pick Eze. And it's just, push come to shove. You can't tell whether Mateta or Edward will both start or either will start, but you know for sure that Jordan Ayew will start on the right side. And as Hodgson changes his tactics as he did against Spurs, Ayew moved over to the left. Jordan Ayew's just been quietly ticking along. And as a 5.4 million midfielder, I feel that 2 returns in 4 at that price bracket, is definitely worth looking at least in terms of owning somebody purely for the fixture, so that 4 weeks later, again, for the purpose of FPL, 4 weeks later, we will transition back up to Mbomo when Brentford start their good run in game week 14 itself.
I will never own Mbuemo. He's the one who's destroyed my season. But you didn't even go for Edward, and I'm actually quite a fan of Mateta. I've said before, when he comes off the bench, he was winning and finishing off games. And he was starting until the last game week against Spurs. But I don't think we'll ever agree with each other, Lucian, on Jordan Ayew. I think I've said before, 1 second he'll take a touch like Ronaldinho, the next second he'll take a touch like Ronald McDonald. Like that is what he does. Like he'll flick it over his head, he'll go on past 3 players and score a volley and be up for the Puskas Award for best goal in the world, and then he won't score for 2 years. Like that's the kind of player he is. And I get that he works hard, but I even remember, I can't remember which team it was, but it was one where like he had 2 defenders in front of him and he had Etse screaming down his left-hand side, and he said he just ran it into the corner into those 2 defenders and lost the ball. Like his vision, his spatial awareness is awful. Like, and then out of nowhere he'll pick a good pass and then do nothing for the rest of the game. Like he works hard, he gets there, he tries. I'm not against his work ethic, and he can be really good, but I don't think we'll ever agree on this guy, because I think he's not even in the 11 if Etse and Elise is fit. It wouldn't be, because it would be Elisa, Etse, and Edward or Mateta in that front line.
Ayew could play 10. Ayew could play 10
instead of Edward.
Oh no, Edward will be the 9. So you don't start Edward and Mateta at the
So
same
then
time.
you would drop Etse or Elise.
No, Eze left, Olise right, Ayew down the center. 4-2-3-1 behind Edward.
You'd have him as the 10? I'd have Etse as the 10.
Okay, then play Ayew on the left. It's easy.
Get rid of him. He's not good enough. Anyway, that's again, we talk about the logic. You've talked about the matchup of like the sides that he's going to be down. You said it yourself, and I've said it was great for Mykolenko against Saka. That is difficult, and you've pinpointed that. So in a 50-50 duel, like you said, with West Ham. So I get the pick, and it's funny that me and Ryan, he had the midfield, I had the forward. I'm like, Palace like a top of the fixture. I can't choose a forward from there.
Second bottom for team attack in the last 6 game weeks.
And without Etse and Elise, that's why I don't have them, right? Because they don't have that creative player. That's why they've sunk so low. Because when they're all fit, wonderful. Like Etse and Elise are amazing players. Elise is another setback, and Etse still are injured. So who's going to create the chances down the side? Who's going to feed the ball in to Jordan Ayew? Who?
They've got 3.
It's the wild pick. Come on, it's the wild pick.
Wild
It's
card.
gotta be wild.
pick.
Okay, how about this? How many returns does Jordan Ayew need to warrant a green?
I'll give you a green if he gets a goal and an assist. 1. I'll take a goal and an assist, so 2 returns, or I'll take a goal. Not 1 assist. I'll take 1 goal or a goal and an assist.
Yep.
Okay.
Not an assist, or if we look back in 4 weeks and like it's a corner and like it's skimmed off his head and Anderson heads it in and Ayew
No, that
gets
doesn't count.
it. That's
No,
what I
that-
mean.
that
I'm
doesn't count.
talking like
That
if
doesn't
we
count.
come back in
Yeah.
4 weeks and he's done a real
goal.
assist, like someone's passed him the ball, he's took a touch, he's fed it through to Mateta or Edward, and they've finished a chance, and it was a nice goal. I'll give you a green for this.
Okay,
Deal.
that's done.
But
Set in stone.
but it should actually even be a yellow because again, we've talked about how precious 5 midfielder slots are, and how affordable it is, like to have a great midfield 5, and the fact that even though he's only 5.4 million, there are so many midfielders ahead of Ayew. If he was a forward, because like I said, in my 3-5-2, if I didn't have Pedro, I could have gone for Ayew if he was a striker, right? If he was a forward, I'd get it. But also the fact that he's taking up such a pressure. If he was a defender or a forward, an easier way to get a green. But the fact that it's a 5 precious midfield slots and Jordan Ayew would be taking one of them in my side, I couldn't do it. But
The thing is, Burnley are so bad that Lucien could be cashing in that green this week.
yeah, you just know it's going to be one of those that we're going. And this is what I said about Ronaldinho or Ronald McDonald. He's going to score like a hat trick. He's going to score a bicycle kick, a 40-yard screamer, and a 1-yard tap in, and that's it. But that's it. That's the risk, and that's what we'll do. But the last point is, and I'm pretty sure it's 50-50. If I'm wrong with captaincy, we'll try not to be too long about this. So before we talk about the 2 big boys in Haaland and Salah, is there a third option? I don't think there is between these players. Am I wrong? Spurs have got Chelsea, so you're not likely maybe to go there. Brighton have got Everton. It's not easy. We don't have
Unless
United
it's on the same
players.
team, then no.
Yeah. Arsenal, so you look at like Saka for captaincy. They're away to Newcastle. Trippier, even for an outside, no, they're at home to Arsenal. It's down to these 2, right? I'm not missing anyone here.
If you really want to take a punt.
But again, it's the same team, right? It's
Yeah,
Liverpool
yeah.
and City, and if you want a punt, you're still gonna choose from sides, right? I think from the notes, you've all gone for Haaland. Okay, so I'll start then because I'm Salah at the minute. Of course it could change. I could panic, and I know the points that you guys are talking about, which is there obviously with effective ownership. He's going to have a big high ownership, and I can again, if I want to be happy, captain Haaland and enjoy all the points. So that is a possibility why I could still do that. It's my birthday this weekend, and I don't want to have a sad Sunday on my birthday because I've captained Salah and he's blanked, and Haaland's gone crazy again, and I'm getting a red arrow. Because I've captained the wrong person again. This would be the 4th time in a row that I've captained the wrong player. But let's just talk quickly about Salah before you guys go on about Haaland. It's incredibly tight. Of course, it's incredibly close. And it is between these 2. Haaland at home to a non-top 6 side feels like it's an easy choice. But I still think Salah's the one for this one. Can't stress enough how bad Luton are, how subpar Premier League this team is, right? They're really bad. All 3 Premier League sides are massively struggling. They're well below everyone else. Salah's on a streak, and Luton have not only conceded. So this is from FPL Meerkat Charlie on Twitter that I first came across this. So I'm not trying to take credit, but it did pop up. Luton have conceded 20 goals in 10 games. Or 2 goals a game, right? 18 of them are down their left side. 18. That is so lopsided. That is incredible. You know that drawing when someone draws like a horse and like the front of the horse is like incredibly detailed and graphic and it looks like it's a photograph. And then as you get to the bum and the back legs of the horse, it looks like a baby's drawn it. That's what this is like. Who is sat on the right side of the Luton defense and team who've only conceded 2 goals, right, in 10 games? You're thinking if you're the right back or the right centre back, You're looking at your right back thinking, we're doing all right here. We've only let 2 goals in 10 games down our side, and you're looking over to your left side, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, have you ever seen such a separation of sides of conceding goals down the left and the right? It's absolutely outrageous how lopsided. Like, yes, we have teams like Brighton that attack heavily down the left and they're solid down the right, but they're still not so lopsided that they concede all the goals down that left-hand side. So, just for that fact, the fact that 18 out of 20 goals comes down that side, Salah is the one who plays there. He's on a hot streak, and Luton are so bad. They're so bad that I know Haaland's at home, and I know he's got Bournemouth, and I know he's going to have ridiculously high ownership. Like, TM, what are you thinking? 170%? 180%?
Who, Haaland?
Yeah,
Oh,
probably.
Right?
Yeah,
For
Haaland,
Haaland,
yeah.
right? And Salah's probably
Yeah,
going
yeah,
to be
yeah. It's gonna
under
be
100%. He might be like 95%, but there's going to be a big difference, right? Haaland's going to be the big, heavy captain again. And I just feel like you said it, we talked way back, if we cast our mind to the start of the show, the big difference that it's going to be, it's not in the players, it's in the captaincy. Unfortunately, the last 3 out of the 4, I've got them wrong. And if everyone's going to go Haaland again, and I just think Luton are worse than Bournemouth. Right? And Salah and Haaland are close, so that's even. Bournemouth beats Luton, okay? Home for Haaland, I get it, but they could be taking him off earlier. They've got Europe on the mind. Salah doesn't have that. Salah's on penalties. Haaland, I think, is on penalties. So again, that's pretty even. It's so close. It's incredibly close. And for me, it just boils down to the fact that Bournemouth are better than Luton. Luton concede a ridiculous amount of goals down their left-hand side, which is exactly where Salah's going to be playing. So that's the key thing. We know how tight it is, but the Luton against Bournemouth and the weak left side, which is almost comical, is what's pulling me towards that. I mean, look, I know a captain's son and he blanked, right? But in the first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of that Spurs-Luton game, Spurs could have been 4-0 up. And then they got the red card just before halftime. And going back to Ryan's point about why he, what he pointed out, like, it always feels like Liverpool score 3 goals. City could score 1 or 2 goals and pass it around the back for the rest of the game. Liverpool don't do that. City can always take an early lead and then just hold the ball. And then I'm a football fan, but I turn off when I watch City do that. City are 2-0 up in the 65th minute. They play the game out. Yeah, they might attack, but they'll just hold the ball. Liverpool never do that. Liverpool will attack because they know they have a defensive weakness. City don't have a defensive weakness. They're incredibly strong defensively, and they'll just play it around. But Liverpool will try and keep scoring goal after goal after goal because they know that they'll concede, and then they could crumble. So, yeah, that's my point. Lucien, captaincy?
Yeah, I think the only argument for Salah is that Salah outscores Haaland. I think it's an underrated stat that Haaland actually does get big chances late game. I understand the point of City sitting off after they take the lead. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's just that Haaland is so domineering in the air and on set pieces and on penalties that he basically puts himself in so many avenues of scoring that, yeah, it's just there. I mean, okay, trying really, really hard not to draw parallels of Bournemouth and Man United here, but I want to at least make it as fair as possible to say that Bournemouth's centre backs qualities are on par with Evans, because I do feel that when City attacked down the left, it was Evans that Haaland intentionally targeted, not Maguire. He was actually deliberately avoiding Maguire just so that he could get behind Evans and over him so that balls to the far post would go in. I think he will do exactly the same thing against Bournemouth's centre backs, because I think if they don't play Senesi, Haaland will absolutely bully Kelly or Metham or yeah, and I think that's where it is. Like Haaland just has this ability to get hauls, even though he's only hauled once. I think the absolutely biggest factor that we've not considered that happened in the last game, right? That trounced Man United 3-0 is number one, John Stones coming back in the midfield. Like they've tried so many pieces solving that mysterious puzzle since game week 1. They've tried Akanji, they've tried Bernardo, they've tried I don't know, they've tried so many players in that inverted midfield role, Rico Lewis, whatever it is. And yeah, finally, Stones coming back in that left half space really helps City dominate teams. So don't ignore those signs that City actually have their strongest 11 back. Yeah, so we've got to look out for that.
Ian?
Yeah, it's Haaland for me. Now, I did consider Salah, and I think he could do well against Luton. There's no doubt about that. But the fact that he just played 90 in the cup game, and I saw a tweet earlier that they actually had to travel back home by bus instead of flight or something. But anyway, Haaland for me, because if you have Haaland playing at home against Bournemouth, and he's sitting here talking about not captaining him, then what's the point? Like, why do you have him in the like? It just scream overthinking for me, and whatever Lucien just said, because I think Relish is back, and Stone playing. I think he was like the ball was fed to him so much more often than when like Doku played, for example. So and he did have 3 double-digit hauls against Burnley, against Fulham, and obviously against Man United last game week. But the quality of Bournemouth is on par with those teams. I'm including Man United here for the defense that we just mentioned. So yeah, so my philosophy that I've mentioned several times is I'm only going against Haaland, being the obvious captain pick every week, only if I think there's a good chance that he will blank, or he will be like very limited in terms of points. So if I'm predicting Haaland to score less than 6 points, then I'm happy to go against him. I don't think he scored less than 6 points in this game week. So Salah could do well, but he won't be outscoring Haaland by a margin big enough that I would risk it. So yeah, I'm here. I'm hoping both of them will do well, but I will sleep much better if I captain Haaland and both of them do well than captaining Salah and both of them do well, or better or worse, Salah won't do as well as Haaland.
Ryan?
Oh yeah.
As a show, we've just picked the wrong captain overall for the last 3 game weeks, sadly. So maybe you're onto something here, because last week I was like Haaland maybe, and then I didn't go for it. Now you're on Salah maybe.
Well,
and
tell me who
don't know
you're
what happened.
feeling and who you're captaining, and then we'll go.
So
Got the second choice.
Yeah.
Got the second
That's what I'm
choice.
thinking.
I'm going. So last week I was worried about Haaland because apart from the history of United being shit and all, is the Jack Grealish been back, and the obviously John Stones one as well factor that does help in terms of service. Now maybe press conference news, if Pep comes and says, "Oh, I'm giving Doku a chance to play in this game," then maybe I might switch my mindset. But for now, I'm on Haaland because of the service that he will get in this game. That's the main reason. If we do get news that Doku and all are playing, then I'll probably lean more towards Salah. But for now, I'll go Haaland, City at home. And then we mentioned, right? Salah's kind of got lucky in the last few games. How much is he going to stretch that luck? I don't know. But yeah, Luton are bad. I would want more Liverpool attackers in this game. But I want Haaland as a potential captain, I think. I don't know. But yeah, we'll see. Press conference news. Leaning towards Haaland for the moment.
It's so close. And you know
Yeah.
what's funny you said about Doku? I said in the last match against Brighton that Doku is a negative for Haaland. Like it was getting towards it, like Doku just runs with the ball and takes it himself, or like it was, I think it was about the 65th or 70th minutes. That's when Haaland visually started to show his frustration with Doku, where he was taking down the left, and like Haaland literally arms it, screaming for the ball. Doku just head down, dribbles, and takes a shot that squanders the opportunity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and I think Pep noticed, right? That Pep noticed that, so he would think about changing.
So I think,
And I think yeah.
if he's going for Grealish, because I even said like Grealish is on the pitch to put the ball for Haaland. That's what it feels like, to hold up the play against high pressure sides and to keep possession, because Grealish is really good at that, and drawing fouls as well. Grealish is great at doing that, and assisting Haaland. That's his job, right? Doku is to go through and try to attack, penetrate defenses. And that's why I think Doku is going to be the player that plays this game over Grealish, because they don't need to worry about possession at home to Bournemouth. And that takes away from Haaland. So that's actually another factor in...
The one thing is they have
sure.
young boys in the Champions League in the next game. So maybe Doku could get that one.
We could get both, and then Grealish comes
Yeah.
back in after that. But that's how it felt watching Doku and Haaland. Like, if you watch back highlights, I don't know if it was on Match of the Day, because I watched the match live, and I think a lot of people missed that because I think it wasn't on in the UK. I can't find the tweets that I was making about it, but I was pointing out about how Haaland was like visually getting pretty annoyed.
When you have Doku and Alvarez in the team, it's bad for Haaland because both are very selfish. And that was the case when Brighton scored their counter-attacking goal against City. It was because both Foden and Haaland were available, and Alvarez just took the pot shot from far, and they countered, and they scored Brighton.
I have this from during the game, and I said, I have a feeling Haaland much prefers Grealish over Doku. So many times Doku has the ball, goes for a dribble, or just shoots, or just too late releasing the ball. A few times today, Doku has the ball, and Haaland is screaming and waving, and it doesn't come. Whereas Grealish often seems to have the objective of put it on a plate for Haaland. And then seriously, just watch Haaland when Doku has the ball and does nothing with it. 70 minutes is the perfect example of Haaland again, peeling towards the back post. Doku just goes for goal, and Haaland slumps and walks back slowly, clearly frustrated. Pep's had a go at Haaland before, if you remember, on the pitch, about it like, it's not all about you, it's a team, right? In front of everyone, scolding him like a schoolboy, right? But this is like, if you can go and watch around like 68 to 72 minutes of that Brighton game, like the full like replay, if you can get to that point, you'll see, and they lose possession, and he doesn't track back. Haaland doesn't chase back. He slumps, and he just casually, leisurely strolls back. So again, if I see Doku in line, which I think he will be, that's a Salah point for me. But yeah, I think that's it for this game week. Captaincy is going to be an absolute killer all the way till deadline, but that's what it's going to be like for most game weeks when Haaland's in the game. But thanks for joining us for this stream. This will also be on Spotify, despite the horrible start of this show, where for some reason my mic was muted for the guys. But that's it. Hopefully we'll all get some green arrows, and I hope I'm going to be right for a change with with the captaincy pick if I stick with Haaland. No, not Haaland, Salah. But yeah, thanks a lot, guys. As always, have a good one.